Welcome back, everybody. We're continuing our conversation in preparation for our upcoming retreat in October, October 12th through 15th, called Harmonizing Sun and Moon, where we're looking, taking different points of view of the feminine and masculine forces and dynamics, and working to create sort of harmonization of those forces within each of us. And I'm really happy to bring back repeat guest Lincoln Gergar, who channels higher self, and you can find out more about him at channelhigherself.com, also on Facebook and on Instagram, and wherever you like to hang out on the web, Lincoln is there. Thanks, Lincoln, for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. Always love being on your podcast and having these great conversations with you. But thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. So, one of the fun things, one of the many fun things about talking to you is that you've got a lot of training in different backgrounds that are relevant to sort of metaphysical work, but also, health and well-being in general. And you have training in yoga, which we share. You have training in understanding of traditional Chinese medicine. Obviously, you have all the insights garnered from working with higher self, and also psychological training. And so there'll be an interesting topic to cover with you. And maybe a good entry point is starting from the yoga perspective and your understanding of how these are looked at in the yoga paradigm, or in the sort of traditional Indian paradigm, and your understanding of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's some different ways that the Indian philosophical systems examine the male-female relationship. And when you look into the philosophies, a lot of it starts at the construction of the universe. So there's a concept of Purusha and Prakriti, and how these two forces interact together. And essentially, one is the masculine essence, one's the feminine essence, and they relate to form and emptiness. So when we look at the cosmology of the universe, there is the space in which everything appears, and that has this feminine principle. Because if we look at our human experience and the feminine qualities of the anatomy of the physical body and also the personality, there's this holding quality. And in the female womb, of course, there's this empty space in which then, impregnation happens. So on a universal perspective, there's the space in the universe that holds form. So form impregnates that space, and then creation is able to be born into that space. So as a very foundational experience of cosmology and of the construction of our universe and our realities, and also of our personal consciousness, we have emptiness and form. So that's where I usually like to begin, because that's our fundamental relationship with existence. For anyone who's practiced meditation, whether it's taught through yoga or Buddhism or more in a non-religious method in the modern world, there's this emphasis on being that open space of empty awareness. So we're actually training ourselves to recognize that universal feminine quality of emptiness. We focus on being that empty space, and then we can hold form without reacting and responding to form. Now, if we look at our participation in creation, we also see these movements, and the feminine energy is very much the movement of receiving. So when we in meditation, for example, settle into that state of being awareness, we're receiving impressions through our senses. We're listening, we're looking, we're taking things into ourselves while we just hold the space, while we're in this state of connection and presence. Then we can look at the masculine quality. So the masculine's the form that impregnates the space, or the form that fills the space. And for ourselves, it's related to our expression of action. So in Ayurveda, for example, there's 5 different actions the body can take. So any type of expression that we put into life, whether it's speech or movement or reproduction or defecation, anything we put into life is a form. And that's that male energy of adding something new into the space of the universe. So fundamentally, while we're existing as consciousness, we're receiving impressions, receiving sensory experiences. And then we're also, of course, responding to what we're receiving, and we're creating with what we're receiving. So all creation comes out of that feminine quality, just like it does in the reproductive process for biological human beings.
Wow, I like that. So most people are familiar with the term Kundalini. And do you qualify this as a feminine or a masculine energy? And what kind of dynamics occur within our context of what we're talking about when this begins to rise or activate?
Mhm. I know that a lot of people refer to Kundalini as a feminine quality of energy, but to me, it actually appears different. I don't consider it feminine. Some people talk like the goddess Kundalini and how she awakens within you. My experience is that it has more masculine properties because it's an expression of creative energy, also because it builds out of the root chakra area. And based upon my understanding, the root chakra is a masculine chakra. So when I look at all of the different chakras, I see an oscillation of male female in the organization of it. So the root chakra is more masculine, and the psychological characteristics of the root chakra are more male in nature. So we have confidence, we have trust, we have security. Those are all more masculine. And if you look at the male's human body, there's more biology in the root chakra area. Our genitals are hanging out of our body. There's more tissue. So there's more form in the male body. The female genitals are empty and hollow inside. And that again is the root chakra area. And so that's having less of an expression. If you look at women as well, usually they desire to receive security from the man. And the man provides security by going out into the world and hunting and gathering, by earning an income, also by offering biological protection. So, in a romantic sense, women value security and they want to receive that from their partner. A man can sustain himself with his own actions. He doesn't value security as much. He desires more of the second chakra quality in a woman, which is the water element, which is the nourishment and the care. The women tend to be able to care for themselves very well. They tend to eat better, they tend to exercise better, take care of their bodies better, they tend to take care of their emotional needs better. And men usually struggle with this because that self-care is a second chakra female quality. So as I look at the human psyche, it goes masculine, feminine in the lower two, and then masculine for the third chakra, that fire element, that solar plexus, confidence and strength. And then the heart chakra, of course, is feminine. It's receiving, it's holding space, it's being compassionate. And then the throat chakra is masculine, how we express ourselves into the world. The Ajna chakra, the sixth chakra, is receiving. So we see visions, we receive perception from the senses, we are receiving everything and then processing it in that part of ourselves. And then the crown chakra is balanced in both. So it has this male female balance, and that relates to a holistic, integrated look at life, our intuition, our higher consciousness, and then also our expansion into the universe. Whereas if we get more awakened, we become a more whole and complete human being, and we balance ourselves better. And then that crown chakra can open up because it requires that type of balanced energy. So when I look at this whole structure of the human psyche and the chakra system, and I see that the Kundalini energy rises from the root chakra, it very much has a lot of masculine property to it. In addition, when we're experiencing that, there's a surge of energy. There's a raising up of energy, and the body gets electrified and the nervous system gets filled with electricity, and we have all these heightened qualities of expression to us. Now, with that said, Kundalini, the word means in Sanskrit, that which is hidden. So I went to India and I got trained in yoga a number of years ago, and that's what I was taught. Kundalini means that which is hidden. Now, commonly in Sanskrit, I know there's people who define things differently. Even the word yoga is defined differently. It's real common. So Kundalini, the way it was taught to me, is there's a hidden energy within us. And so that hidden nature is very feminine. Kundalini means that which is hidden, such as at the bottom of a pond of water or deep within a cave. So there's something hidden in the darkness, in that which you cannot see. And if you can awaken that, then you have this rising energy that starts to fill your nervous system. It starts to go up your spine, and that central energy channel, it activates your brain and awakens these higher sensibilities like psychic vision, out of body travel, and so on. So there is a feminine property to it, how it's hidden within the darkness. But when it gets expressed, it definitely does have a masculine quality to it.
Mm. I was recently in this interview series speaking to an acupuncturist here in Sedona, and she was talking about the qualities of Jing, Qi, and Shen, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and she was talking about how Big Shen, or something like Source, is descending through the crown and comes down to the heart, which is Little Shen, and that that energy then gets distributed to all the organs from the heart. And in it, obviously you appeared in my mind, because that's essentially how I've heard you describe how you channel higher self. Is that your understanding? And in other words, do you think this description is what happens to you when you're channeling?
Yeah, I think that the way you just described it can be accurate to what I'm experiencing. We're all trying to find maps to explain our reality, and we use symbolism and different examples to share our experience, so we understand what's happening in each other's realities. And this idea of like a big Shen or a greater Shen and a lesser Shen, that's very accurate in a sense. So for me, in my heart is my personal consciousness, or my soul. It's the deepest part of me. And that would be Shen. Shen's often translated as your spirit, or that deep essence of you. And then the higher self is this greater universal quality of consciousness. So your personal consciousness, your personal soul, or your Shen, has all the same attributes, the same properties as the universal consciousness does. So we have awareness, we have intelligence, we have creative energy. And that's that Sat Chit Ananda, which is described in the Indian traditions. And if we look at our experience and really break it down, those are the fundamentals. We are perceiving, which is like the emptiness, feminine quality. We are also creating, which is that energy coming into form. That's more that masculine quality. And then we have a third quality, which is the intelligence. And the intelligence awakens through the interaction of awareness and energy. Because when we have forms interacting, we have the opportunity to build knowledge. Only if the universe is appearing as awareness and energy can an experience even be arising. And when the experience arises, then we have knowledge. Now, you could also go a step deeper and realize that there's also an intelligence that exists before the creation of the universe. So there's an unmanifest quality of awareness, intelligence, and energy. Like God knows it exists even outside of the universe. Even before anything was created, God is aware of itself, God knows itself, and God has the potential energy to create anything. So these three qualities really encompass the nature of existence itself, whether it's an unmanifest Godhead, or whether it's God being a creator, or as well, whether it's in the forms of creation. Because even every part of your being has these three qualities. At least this is how I understand it. So if you look at the cell of your body, that biological organism, it's aware of itself existing because it's able to function. It's aware of its environment. It interacts with the other cells and the different fluids of your body in order to function with digestion and respiration and regeneration and rebirthing or reproduction. And then also there's energy within the cell. And then there's the intelligence of the cell. The cell knows what to do. The cells aren't these random chaotic things. There's order. So there's evidence of intelligence. So all these properties of awareness, intelligence, and energy exist as our personal consciousness. They're found in every single form in the universe, and then they're also part of this universal self. Now, in my own work, channeling the higher self, I definitely go into my heart and the energy opens up. I feel a column of light appear from my heart, and it rises up and it goes out of my crown chakra. And that then expands my awareness, and I feel myself existing as bigger than my human body. When I'm in that expanded state, I'm connected into that greater Shen, or that universal consciousness. And then that allows the facilitation of a communication process. So I not only channel information, but I also channel the creative energy. So those three properties of awareness, intelligence, and energy of the universal self become part of my human self. And the degree to which I can let go of my human identity and let myself become the universe is the degree to which I can embody those qualities and then express them here. So
So
yeah.
interesting. So you could also say that those three qualities are something like the Trinity in the mystical Christian tradition. Would you consider that similar?
It's all about maps and definitions of terms. So a lot of what I've used to help structure my vocabulary about this comes from India, comes from Buddhism and the yoga traditions, because I found that a better developed structure of knowledge and science and cosmology. Looking into the religions that grew up around the Mediterranean in our historical look at the universe, I see there's a lot of personification of these qualities. So you have like God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. I, of course, could break it down and try to fit those descriptions into it. But the way it's described religiously, because I do have a degree in religion, it's very much outside of the scientific structure that you find in India or in the way I just explained it to you. So you could make it fit, but it's not traditionally how it's taught.
Sure.
The idea of God the Father and God the Son is very much like that higher self, or that greater Shen, and then the Son is the lesser Shen. You could also say God the Father is the original intelligence, and then out of that intelligence, there's another form created, but usually Holy Spirit is described as our inspiration or our creative energy flow. And so, yeah, it's kind of difficult to fit that the way I just described it into that religious perspective, just because of how it's defined. But essentially, you can break it down in any type of trifold way.
Another key sort of essential understanding inside traditional Chinese medicine is yin yang, or Taoism. We'll just like kind of draw it to Taoism, is yin yang. And how do you understand these two principles?
Yeah. So when we look at yin yang, usually it's referencing the energy flow of the human body, and it's also referencing the organ function. So every organ has a quality of energy. And the name of the organ energy is because the channel runs through that organ. So there's all these channels of electrical energy. And they're electrical because we put metal needles in to move the electricity. So when it gets blocked up, it's all gathered there. You can put a metal needle in, and that starts dispersing and breaking up the block. Your whole biological system runs on electricity. If you have a knot, like a muscular knot, and you push into it, chances are that's the exact location of an acupuncture point. And if someone puts a needle in there, if a therapist needles that point, it's going to hurt because that muscular area is tight and contracted, which means the electricity is stuck in that area and your muscles in spasm. And this also applies to the fascial tissue. The fascial tissue carries electricity, so it's in like a state of spasm. Metaphysically and psychologically, you would say, oh, well, you have a block in your mind, or you have stress or some belief, and that's causing a block in the energy system that then translates to a block in the electrical flow of your body, because your psyche interfaces through electricity to become a biological expression. So the electrical body connects your psyche with your musculature. And that's why our psyche affects the biological function of organs. When you're in stress, you have less energy. There's less electricity. If anyone's explored energy medicine and these machines, they add frequency. They add electricity, and the electricity gives you more energy. It makes you feel good. It releases blockages. So the electrical energy is very much a part of this sustaining quality that comes into us. So when we look at electricity, we have two polarities. We have the positive and the negative, the plus and the minus. If you think of a magnet, you always have plus and minus. You think of a battery, you always have plus and minus. So every organ has this yang energy, which could be the plus of the battery, and this yin energy, which is the negative aspect. When both positive and negative are in a state of balance, the organ's able to function well. Because too much of one thing can cause a disturbance. If you look at physical health, if you over-exercise and you don't rest, you're going to get sick. If you rest too much and you don't exercise, you're going to get sick. Right? You have to have the masculine, the expression, the exercise. You have to have the relaxation, the not doing, the emptiness, the feminine. So biologically, we're designed to live in balance. And same with psychologically. We have this map of chakras, which are the different psychological properties of our personality. And if we're too out of balance and we're too masculine and we shut down our feminine, we're going to have stress. We're not going to have healthy relationships. We're not going to feel like we're enjoying our career because we work too hard and we don't let ourselves rest and embrace that feminine part, for example. So everything in reality is very much based on this interplay of male and female. It appears in the beginning of the universe as emptiness and form. It appears in the organs as these male-female energies. It appears in our senses as action and inaction, as exercise and rest, as talking and listening. So as human beings, we're really learning how to bring balance into our experience in order to create the highest quality. And if you look at Chinese medicine or Ayurveda, you need to have this balance. Otherwise, you're going to, at some point, cause yourself illness.
Makes me think, too, another polarity that is constantly being managed by the body is what's called redox or oxidation reduction, which is very similar to what you were just talking about with electricity. Reduction would be the addition of electron, even though that does not sound intuitive. And oxidation would be the loss or the movement of an electron from one substance to the other. And one of the best theories that we have of aging is over oxidation, basically free radicals that are constantly looking for electrons, and they're taking them from healthy tissue. And so restoring redox balance is a very almost like terrain oriented action that a person can take to enhance or extend life, or it's an anti-aging strategy and just a general health strategy. It reminds me too, and I wanted to bring this up to you, see what your thoughts were. And I've been talking to you about iron and copper in this relationship, and we're going to have another, I think it will, yeah. So the interview with Morley Robbins that people will be able to check out, because that's already up. And so he talks a lot about iron and copper balance, mostly because of this redox relationship that exists between the two and requiring both of them. And so as I looked into this further and started to look for some type of metaphysical explanation or understanding of this iron and copper mineral, it appears really prevalently in alchemy. And the metal of iron being governed by the planet Mars, and the metal of copper being governed by the planet Venus. And which then, astrologically, that has very similar masculine and feminine qualities when it's described what those planets govern, essentially, which is really interesting.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And then if you look at the ancient texts of alchemy, they would talk about transmuting something heavy like lead, which is very much like iron, into something like gold, which is a metal similar to copper. They have this brilliance and this radiance that develops. And that, I think, emphasizes in our modern day world, especially, the need to work with these parts of yourself to bring them into a greater state of harmony and balance. And of course, from your own experience, it's our relationships, especially with the opposite sex, that really challenge us to grow, to become these greater beings. So even while we're trying to establish a greater balance in ourselves, we need the opposite in order to move into these greater states of health and expression. So if, say iron is the masculine part, because it's heavier and dense, and I'll just guess at this, and then copper be the feminine part, you would then need to add copper if you're out of balance with too much iron. And that would bring you back into balance. That's the feminine part. If your human personality has too many masculine parts to it and you're not in balance, you're going to be stressed. You're going to be unhappy with your life. It's not going to feel complete. It's not going to feel harmonized and nourishing. So you have to add more feminine energy. And you can do it in the world around you by maybe having some more female friends, or if you're in a marriage, for example, listening more to your spouse or communicating more with your spouse, understanding your partner's needs as well, so you can create that bonding. But essentially, that balance, I think it appears everywhere in our experience, and adding more of what we don't have then brings us into that state of balance. And like you were saying, the evidence is the health benefit that is achieved because we've created the balance of these natural elements that want to be partnered together.
Another example of this, and this is more specifically for fertile females, is this balance between the sex hormones estrogen and progesterone that are fluctuating constantly as they cycle. And I have been doing a lot of consultations with the Dutch test laboratory as part of these Dutch tests come in, just to talk about the sample results. So one of my questions has been, well, tell me about the types of the patterns of imbalance that you see for females and males. What are examples of those? And within females, it's always this relationship between estrogen and progesterone. In some cases, progesterone is low and estrogen is normal. In some cases, estrogen is high, progesterone is normal. In some cases, both can be within a normal range, but they're so far apart within that normal range that there's an imbalance there. And almost always, because of this relative difference, regardless if estrogen is high, it's normal, or progesterone is low, or it's normal, the symptoms are essentially the same. At least on a psychological level, the feeling of estrogen dominance. And the same goes true for males. Like, a pattern of balance could be estrogen is too high, testosterone, as a result of that being low, or testosterone is simply low and estrogen is normal. And the cause, the way the body got there is different in all of these different patterns, but the sort of net effect of them is the same.
Yeah,
So
I think you pointed out something really important, because when people usually get a blood lab workup, they might see that everything is in that normal range and they don't understand why they're having the symptoms they are. The doctors are saying, well, it's normal, so you shouldn't have the symptoms. But what you pointed out, I think, is very important. It's the relationship between the different parts that'll determine the health or the illness of the body. It's not trying to be normal. It's about trying to create balance and harmony within yourself. And I think we see that in society at large as well. There's a big emphasis on being normal, being a normal person, fitting this norm and standard, but we forget that we're trying to experience harmony with the certain people in our lives. We're not trying to fit the normal of society. We're trying to find balance in our relationships, find our place in society. So it's more about the specific relationships. You might be normal and your sibling or your romantic partner might be normal, but you have completely different interests and you don't get along. And all you want is to get along. So the goal of life, I think, should not try to be normal or fit in a normal range, but how can you learn to harmonize these different parts of your external world or your internal chemistry so you get the happiness that you want? And if you use happiness as the measuring stick, then I think it's a lot easier to navigate as compared to trying to find the normal values for something.
Yeah, that is a good point. And what Western medicine does not really understand is these relationship values, in that none of these things are operating in isolation, which is obvious. That's obvious to anybody, that none of these markers that are being tested for are operating on their own and have no effect or are not being affected by other markers. Yet the relationships are not well established. In some cases they are, but in most cases they are not. And I think that is sort of the new medicine, is understanding these relationships and relating them not to what is normal, but to what would occur in TCM or in Ayurveda, which is getting you closer to your constitution, getting you closer to your original blueprint. And in order to do that, you have to understand what it is, right? So you have to understand what your original blueprint or constitution is before you even start adjusting something.
Yeah, definitely. As you were talking, I thought of another good analogy, because for me, when I look at life, that which is happening inside something is also going to manifest in a similar way outside of it. So you were describing modern day medicine, how they isolate everything and they don't focus on relationships. Well, we can look at the scope of science itself. It's always trying to isolate things in the experiment and not look at relationships, but identify one factor. And then also built into the scientific model is an absence of our connection to the environment. So there's this whole idea of never-ending progress with a disrespect to the environment and the relationship we have to the environment. There's a disrespect to the body, even though the first tenets of medicine are do no harm to the patient. Our medicine does a lot of harm to us. We cause all these other effects, which are labeled side effects, but they're actually effects of the medicine, because we don't appreciate and value the relationship we have. You increase, you have take a drug for heart disease, for example, maybe you'll lower those risk factors, but as a result, you increase the risk factor of the liver or of the kidneys. And so people aren't understanding the relationship in modern day science because they're conditioned to believe everything is separate. And you can take it as well as the atheistic viewpoint of modern day science. Now, not all scientists are atheistic, of course, but with atheism, there's a disconnect from any sort of intelligence and any sort of relationship you have with nature. Atheism by design is very dry, very independent, very calculated. And some would say it lacks emotion, and emotion is really the place where we experience that energy of connection. And I think no matter how we're exploring the universe, we're going to come back to this key idea that everything is connected, everything is affecting everything else, and it's our relationships that we're here to learn, because relationships expand the definition of myself beyond just being a personal consciousness into being one with the entire universe. So this again ties in that, lesser Shen, greater Shen, this whole design of our awakening process and how it's demonstrated in our day-to-day interactions with each other and with our health and all these parts of the dynamic experiences we're having.
Any more insights that you have maybe garnered from the higher self work that you do that we haven't covered?
Yeah, I think the takeaway from all of this is that we're ultimately looking for a higher quality of experience. And there's so many factors involved, right? There's all these different chemicals, there's all these different ideas, all these relationships we're having. And if we understand what we're all trying to gather is the connection, the happiness that comes when we connect, when we have harmony, when we have cooperation, we have balance. So when we're looking at hormones, for example, the way you'll know that you're improving your diet or any sort of supplements or medicine you're taking is working is because the quality of your life is better. The quality of your happiness. You wake up in the morning, you have energy that maybe you were lacking before. Your mind thinks more clearly. Rather than emphasizing isolated parts and abstract ideas, I think we really have to start embracing our own experience and the power that we have as human beings. Because in the modern day medical model, we're not taught, or we're taught to devalue our own insights. You tell the doctor something feels off, the doctor says, no, that's not a problem, your numbers look normal. And if we look back, a few decades, people would come into the doctors and complain about things, and they would say, "Oh, you're making it up. It's a made up illness." And to the person experiencing it, it's definitely not made up. It's just that the medical model hasn't yet discovered possible causes and recognized those symptoms as an illness, when in fact it is causing suffering. It is an illness. So I think the takeaway is that we all need to have a very personal relationship with our reality and trust ourselves that if it feels right and it's giving us good feedback, then we're on the right path. Because we try diets, we try exercise, we're trying everything to improve our health. And sometimes we feel lost not knowing if it's working. If we can be more in that feminine energy and be patient, not trying to throw every idea at it and throw every method at it, but instead relax, be that awareness and try to observe what's the feedback. Do one thing, express a male energy, do one action, then surrender into your female quality and observe, okay, how'd that make me feel? When I've been doing this supplement for a week, or I've tried this new exercise program, how am I feeling now? Because that's you living in harmony with your male female at that very fundamental level of being awareness and being that creative energy. And then as you interact in both those balanced aspects of your creative process, you expand your intelligence. So now you understand how to create at a higher level. And that just keeps accelerating as you ascend into these greater levels of human function. So you learn how to work with your body, work with your mind, work with your emotions, create better relationships, succeed in your career. Like all of this is based upon functioning in a balance of male female energy.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Lincoln. Let
Yeah.
everybody know again where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me at my website, channelhigherself.com. And also you can find me on YouTube. Again, the channel name is channelhigherself.com. I have thousands of videos. I've been doing this for almost 20 years now. And I also work with people one-on-one in personal sessions. We can talk like you and I have been talking today, but oftentimes I will go into that expanded consciousness and channel for anyone that I'm working with. I have a class that goes on. It's an ongoing class every Sunday. So there's really a lot of different ways that people can interact with me. And usually it starts by just looking at all the free content I have out there.
Cool. And Lincoln will be joining us in October to do some channeling and it's guided meditation. So if you haven't signed up, I think we've got at this point another spot left. So yeah, it'd be great if you
Yeah,
joined us.
yeah, great. Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. And I'm real excited. I love these retreats. I learn a lot from all the presenters. I learned from you today, even listening to talk in this conversation. And I'm excited to continue it. You know, hormones are part of my reality. And yeah, as you get older, you need to know more about them so you can keep your body in that state of balance. So I'm looking forward to learning from you at the retreat also.